1 year ago, the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, and within minutes, Missouri became the first state in the country to make providing abortion a criminal offense. Our guest this evening, Jeff Basinger, is an attorney from Columbia, Missouri, who submitted a petition on August 1, 2022, which proposed a constitutional amendment to protect abortion rights with the goal of getting it on the November 2024 ballot. The proposal was Basinger's response to the June decision in Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization that overturned the 1973 decision in Roe v. Wade that the federal Constitution gave women the right to seek an abortion. Missouri's law banning all abortions except in the case of medical emergency took effect mere minutes after the decision was delivered. It was the first state in our country to enable the trigger law. The proposal Basinger submitted would add exceptions for pregnancies resulting from rape or incest and to protect the health of the woman. It would have also mandated that the state allow women seeking an abortion to obtain medications approved by the FDA. Basinger wanted the Missouri Secretary of State, Jay Ashcroft, to start the reviews process, which can take up to 51 days, so he could begin gathering signatures just after last year's election on November 8th. Instead, Ashcroft notified Basinger that the review would begin on November 9th. Basinger sued to test that decision. Here is his story and what happens next. So please, let's welcome my guest, Jeff Basinger. Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
Thanks for having me on.
I cannot thank you enough for being here tonight with us. This is a very important time in our history, and our rights have basically been stripped away.
Right.
So there are things to do. There is work to be done, for sure.
Absolutely.
So can you just tell us a bit about your background, who you are?
Right, sure. I'm Jeff Basinger, and by trade, I'm an attorney. And I'm sitting at my firm right now. Co-own a small law firm in Columbia, Missouri. I've been here for 8 years. My career has kind of been split in half at this point. Here for 8 years, and before that, my first 8 years of being a lawyer was also in Columbia working for legal aid. So I'm from Blue Springs originally. Got a wife, I've got 2 kids. I got a girl going into 2nd grade and a boy who's going to be 3. And so that's pretty much who I am.
So you have a daughter.
That's right, little Fiona. Yeah, she's going to be in 2nd grade.
That's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
So this concerns you as much as it concerns any of us, I'm sure.
Absolutely. I mean, every single person growing up here is going to have to deal with these laws, and we're going to have to get our rights sorted out. In 2018, the trigger laws were passed. And so we never knew if or when they were going to go into place. And in Missouri, we got some of the strictest ones in the country. And so November 2024, hopefully it'll be the first time that we can address those since abortion rights got stripped.
So can you tell people what the ballot initiative is for people that don't realize what that is yet?
Sure. It is a way for Missourians to engage in direct democracy. It is a process where the people, through petitioning, can place proposals on the ballot, and it can be statute or it can be constitutional amendment. About half the states in the country have procedures like this. And so the way it works is you have to gather signatures on petitions. And it takes signatures of 2/3 of the districts in the state. We have 8 districts, so you need 6. You need 8% of the population in 2/3 of those districts. So it's a process that works in 2-year cycles. And from step 1 through the last step of collecting those final signatures and getting it ready for placement on the ballot, you have a chance to do that every 2 years. And so it's a way for people to propose laws outside of the legislature.
Do people do this often?
Yeah, people do this often. In Missouri, it has been around for over 100 years. And so some of our most important laws have been passed through it. One that's important to me is the Missouri Plan for choosing judges. It's one of the most famous pieces of legislation out there. It's the nonpartisan judicial plan where we have a committee propose judges that go on the court, and then the people get to vote later after the governor selects from the three nominees. We've had riverboat gambling, we've had stem cell research, more recently, marijuana legalization. We've had the minimum wage increases, Medicaid expansion. We've had a lot of important measures passed through the ballot initiative, especially the last 10 years or so.
So can anyone do this? Do you have to be an attorney to do this?
No, it is the people's right. So you're a Missouri citizen, you're over the age of 18. It's basically, if you can vote in Missouri, then you can help engage in this process.
And what is your ballot initiative exactly?
My ballot initiative was the first one to try to get on the November 2024 ballot as far as restoring abortion rights and setting aside the trigger laws. So mine, I don't expect it to gather signatures at this point. There's right now other ones being proposed. But as you said in the intro, I wanted FDA medications approved, and I wanted exceptions for rape and incest. Those were some of the most extreme parts of the trigger laws. And so August 1st, that's what I proposed. But I proposed mine a few days before one of the first times that people had a chance to vote on it. And Kansas was the first one. And about the same time my proposal was arriving on August 1st, Kansas voted, and I believe it was not even close, 59 to 41%. They said that they shot down the proposed change to their constitution that would have taken away abortion rights. And I believe every single one has been successful since then that's gone through the initiative proposal. And so nobody really knew going into it how things were going to kind of swing. But I think all the polling and the results have shown that people just want normal, reasonable, traditional rights that were similar to what happened before the Dobbs decision that we had been living under for half a century, basically.
But I'm going to read another little piece that I saw that says, the landslide victory for abortion rights in Kansas proves there is a gap between the law on abortion and what the people want, Basinger said. And that will encourage efforts to overturn Missouri's restrictions, whether it is in your proposal or not. Do you think the precedent that Kansas has set will help us?
I think so. I think that woke a lot of people up. I think that people were not sure what to expect. And I think that around that time, people realized that they want traditional abortion rights. And then you started having more polling about what people want. And then after that, there's been success in other states too. I mean, Michigan, Connecticut, or not Connecticut, but Kentucky, Montana, Vermont, California have had referendum or ballot initiative type proposals. And they've been successful. So that woke people up. And I think that the results since then have shown that, the people are just wanting things kind of back to how they were. And they don't want to have extreme laws like Missouri has.
Yeah, Missouri is probably one of the most extreme, isn't it?
It's got an exception for the medical health of a woman. So basically, if you're going to die, supposedly, but that still even puts doctors in a bind and women in a bind because they don't want to get criminally charged. And there's plenty of stories out there about what terrible situations that people are placed in where their health has to keep getting worse and worse. And there's not even an exception for rape or incest. And so these are the types of things that, overwhelming majorities of people, I don't know, you can look at different polls, but over 70, 80% of people, it's totally out of step with what people want.
Right. I think a majority of the citizens in this country and this state want freedom of choice, and bodily autonomy. Most of the people I've spoken to do. And I know people from both sides of the aisle, and most people are just pretty outraged about this. It's just, it's not something that I think we thought we'd ever see.
Right. It's amazing. And I think that it's not something that people thought they would see. It is a modern society now. And when you have a right like this in place for half a century like that, and then, people by that time thought it was long overdue to get a U.S. Supreme Court case in line like that. People want that. And then I think that there's people in the middle, that middle 15% or so that politicians always talk about. Once it happened and once it got passed and once we had Supreme Court judges all of a sudden put in place and it happened, and then you started seeing these laws and you started seeing how it got enacted, like by trigger laws where people didn't really see it was coming. They kind of got blindsided by a law that was already on the books, and then bam, it's in place. I think that those people in the middle kind of had a chance to say, look at how this is actually working. This does seem extreme. This does seem like something that we don't need in our modern USA society. It's taking away a right like that is, people basically say there's not really a parallel for it. And I don't think that people know how that was going to feel or how it was going to look like until it happened. And a lot of people who were kind of on the fence said this is kind of a scary situation, really, to have a right taken away like that.
Exactly. Oh, it's very scary. It's scary for myself and my family and my daughter, my sister, my mother, my husband. Everyone. It affects all of us. So it's based on isn't it based on some sort of draconian, like 1868 law? I want to read one other thing that I read about this. I think you said this. Using this pre-1868 regulation of third parties as justification for reversing a personal constitutional right in 2022 is nonsense. Alito wants to have his originalist cake and eat it too. He views liberty of women through the lens of 1868. When transporting us to that era, he fails to consider that the statutes are justified in light of the medical environment. The difference between medical procedures in 1868 and 1973 is akin to the difference between a horse and buggy and a rocket ship.
That's right. That was me. Yes. So you mentioned 1868 statutes from my article. Right. So Alito did author this opinion, and so it was an originalist opinion, as the conservative justices often have that viewpoint. And so they got to pick that viewpoint, and that's controversial start to begin with. So it's based on the Due Process Clause, the 14th Amendment that was in 1868, just after the Civil War ended. And so the interpretation under Roe was an interpretation of the word liberty from the Due Process Clause. And so Justice Alito's start is, let's go to 1868 and think about what legislators and the government would have thought about the word liberty in 1868. So that's a controversial start to begin with. You're taking a modern society and going back 154 years and saying, what would these people think about it? And so that's his start. And then that is his whole justification of it. So he looks at these 37 statutes that were in place in 1868. And he says, well, abortion was criminalized. And so if they thought abortion was criminalized, it couldn't have been a liberty. It couldn't have been a liberty under the Due Process Clause. And there's a couple of big points wrong with that. One is it was not criminalized. And two, it couldn't have been a liberty restriction given the medical environment. And those are the 2 points in that article I wrote on June 24th, on the anniversary of the Dobbs decision, tries to make. It's amazing how much smoke and mirrors there is in that decision. And so his number one point is, yes, he says abortion was criminalized. It never was criminalized. These statutes, you can't find a single woman where you say, okay, this woman was convicted of aborting of terminating a pregnancy, having an abortion. It was third parties. So it said you can't assist somebody. So when you're analyzing a criminal law, what you have to do is figure out who is the target of the law, who's the potential criminal here. Mm-hmm. It was not the women at all, ever. And so when he says abortion was criminalized, they never took this personal liberty away from women. It was not criminalized. Find me a single one that was convicted. There's not a woman that was convicted. And that's his whole argument. He puts all those statutes in this big appendix, and he sits there and hammers the word criminal, 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 and it wasn't criminalized. And then, the medical issues also. And that's his other big argument that he totally overlooks. So if it's going to be a liberty restriction, it's either criminal, which it clearly wasn't. It tries to make you think it is. But, Roe, it was when the Roe versus Wade decision was entered, it didn't just say, okay, now there's no regulations, just everybody do whatever you want on abortion. That's not what Roe did at all, right? So, the after viability, about the 24th week or 28th week, depending on what point you're looking at, you could say you can't have an abortion. So that's one limit. The other limit is even earlier in pregnancy, medical. Everything's medical related. You go to a doctor for everything. If you're getting prescription for medication abortion, that's obviously heavily medically related. And the safety of the woman, and woman has an interest in making sure they're safe, clean, proper procedures. Everything is medically regulated. So we're not just talking about whether it was criminal. There was still regulations after Roe. And so he tries to hammer on the word criminal just so it doesn't look like he even has to reach the point of, were these statutes in 1868, and he chose the time period, so we give him that even, were the statutes justifiable medically? He doesn't ever reach that issue because he sits there and pretends like he doesn't have to by acting like abortion was criminalized when it was not at all, and there wasn't a single woman ever convicted. And of course, it was medically justified. All these statutes were basically versions of the same regulations that were permitted under Roe today, because abortion used to be way more dangerous. 100 years of medical technology, totally different. You didn't have doctors even then. You didn't have a license to practice medicine. It was just people. There wasn't the regulatory structure in place. There weren't licensed doctors. There wasn't modern medical technology. So it was just a hazardous procedure, and just random people that weren't really properly trained in anywhere close to where they are today. And Roe explicitly talks about this. They say it's not a hazardous procedure anymore. So banning a third-party involvement then might have made sense. It was dangerous. It's a random kind of barely trained stranger. Yeah, you could say that person doesn't have a right to get involved because they're not skilled in what they're doing. Definitely not skilled in the way they are like a doctor today is not even close. So banning third-party involvement then might have made medical sense. You can't, there's tons of things that you can't do as an untrained, unlicensed doctor. You can't practice medicine today. It's still criminal. It's still criminal to do that.
So the entire thing is based on a lie or a misinterpretation at the very least.
A total lie. I mean, a total lie because, however you want to put it, because he's trying to make everyone think that abortion was criminalized, and you can't point to a single woman that was convicted. So, very misleading at the best. And then to show that Roe needs to be overturned, he needs to at least analyze these statutes to see if they were medically justifiable. There's not a difference in the liberty restriction if those statutes were medically justifiable. And at a minimum, he should be looking at that issue and saying, no, look, this was not justifiable medically. And so we can say it was a liberty restriction that was more restrictive, that was different than what we have today. But he doesn't even approach the issue. I mean, and that's too bad, because Roe does say it was a hazardous, inherently mortally dangerous procedure over 100 years ago, 154 years ago, and it's just not anymore. So that type of difference that is baked into the reasoning explicitly in Roe, just not addressed in any way, shape, or form at all.
Wow. That's crazy. It seems crazy that could happen based on something like that, which is
what I thought too. So that's what I thought too. And I couldn't believe it. So, this decision is something that people have talked about, for decades, people have wanted it overturned. And so all growing up for decades, when I was paying attention to politics in high school on the debate team or going to law school, all this, wondering what would that even look like if it ever happened. So this decision comes out and there's all kinds of possible arguments floating around, that they might make or they might not make. And I was wondering, what in the world are they going to argue? So as soon as that draft opinion came out, I read it, and then it just kind of seemed funny. I'm like, okay, it's based on history. And then it really didn't even take that long to look around and find out, is this true? Is it really criminalized? That's his number one argument. These are his arguments. This is it. We're finding out what these arguments are. I couldn't believe it. It's like, it's just smoke and mirrors is what it looks like to me.
Are others questioning this?
I think that some people are, but I was kind of amazed by I think that people, when the draft opinion, that's when I was mainly looking, when I did my most looking around what other people say. And I think that a lot of people were afraid to say something. And, I say, well, it's out there and people have been arguing about these types of issues before the opinion. They'll keep arguing afterwards. I can put my 2 cents in. There's not, it's America. There's no harm in that. And I think that I didn't see a lot of people putting out their opinion. And so I think there's other people out there that are doing it, but I don't know, that not as much as you would think from what I can see.
You would think.
I think it's just kind of viewed as a lost cause, as far as you're not going to get them to overturn it because it's a 6-3 court system, right? And so I think that a lot of people just say, well, it's done. And I think, and there should be more scholarship out there. And I think there's a lot of lawyers and people out there who, if they wanted to sit down and write an argument, they could write probably something like I'm writing, or, but a lot of people kind of just think it's a little pointless, but I don't know. I was always curious to see what the reasoning would be. And I think it's important that it's just weird to me that it's a historical argument saying this was criminalized historically. I think people should know it's not true, right? I think that's important.
Very much
that's
so.
important.
Yeah.
No, I think it's very important. I think that people should know the truth. I think that that legislatures all across the country are deciding what to do about this. People through things like the ballot initiative are deciding what to do with this. And I think knowing how it got enacted, knowing what the reasoning is, it's important to know how important it is to change it and get back to where we were and restoring our rights again. You need to know that it's based on faulty premises. And it's dangerous for everyone to tell each other that we were growing up in families having family planning issues decided, and our wives and moms and sisters were getting thrown in jail, I guess, right? About 37 statutes, right? 1868, criminal. All these women were criminals, right? That's a dangerous argument to me.
So what is your desired outcome for this? What do you what happens next? And what are you going to do? What's the timeline?
Well, the more important one is whatever one is ready for signatures and kind of has the support system to get it going. I guess I'll keep mine hanging around because no one's ready yet, because people's rights are getting blocked right now. So I am keeping an eye on the ACLU case that's pending right now. The arguments are getting submitted as we're talking, today. So I'm watching that case. I'm waiting to see what proposal will be ready for signatures. I'm waiting on that. But in my case, mine's still going because of ballot initiative reasons, mainly. I started it off because I thought that it was important that the Dobbs decision, the faulty analysis behind it, get attention. 2, I wanted to get an early start because I wanted more people, as many people involved in Missouri that make these kinds of decisions, to kind of get on the ball, get moving, get going, know that the ballot initiative is the way this is going to get fixed, right? And so you quoted those Missouri Independent articles, and I was hoping people realize, okay, it's time to get organized. It's time to get moving on some proposal that'll be ready to reach the finish line. So I wanted that early start. And those were two of my goals. Now what I'm down to is the ballot initiative rights. And so my case is still pending. I appealed the decision, and I go up August 9th, the day before mine and Missouri's birthday, August 10th. And they'll argue it in front of the Western District. And so what my argument is, I was right that I could have started the process and started the 51-day review procedure before that November election. So they said I had to wait until after the November election. I say, no, you can start earlier. So my case involves how early can you get started? And we're seeing how important that is right now, because, Andrew Bailey's blocking everyone's rights right now. And they're playing games with these statutes and delaying things. So that time, how early can you get started, is still important. August 9th is my oral argument. So
August 9th.
Yes. So yeah, the written arguments are done. I submitted my brief, and then Secretary of State Ashcroft, the Attorney General, as attorney for them, and they submitted their brief. And so oral argument is August 9th in that. And then it'll take them, a month or so, or however long to decide. And they take as long as they need to, because they're the court, but a month or two, and they'll make their decision on it. And so what I'm hoping for is, the Secretary of State's argument is a constitutional argument. So the statutes say you submit one of these sample petitions, and that's what I did. I submitted a sample petition, and so they have to approve it and say, okay, 51 days later, went through a process, now you can start signatures. So they say, no, it was too early, and they're using the Missouri Constitution to interpret that. And so we'll see if their interpretation of the Missouri Constitution is correct on it. And we'll see if I am right. Then you might be able to start, instead of having to wait after the day after a November election every 2 years to start. You would be able to start the day after the signatures are due. So the signatures are due in May, 6 months before the election, where you would vote on it. You got to get all your signatures, and that gives 6 months to get it ready for the ballot so people can vote on it. It would be 6 extra months, basically. And so that could potentially be the result if I win. You can start 6 months earlier.
So now you don't have a time constraint. Now you're in time. Now they have to pretty much go ahead with it, right?
Well, now if I were to resubmit it, but I have not resubmitted it, because I would just give them one more argument, honestly, to say it's moot, that the judge doesn't have to decide it. I think that the court probably still would, because it's a type of issue that needs to be decided. They're saying constitutionally this is how it works. I'm saying it's not. That's a recurring problem potentially. So usually a court will say we're going to decide it anyway, but I just don't want to give them the extra argument. So I refuse to just submit it again. I'm going to have my case. I'm going to have my case instead. Basically, I'm going to protect my case. But yeah, I could submit it again now, because now it's past November now, right?
So have you ever considered teaming up with any other organizations to maximize like efforts with this petition, or are you just doing it on your own?
No, I mean, I'm just doing it on my own. I got it started on my own because I just figured, hey, when I looked at the rules and everything, I said, I think that you can start this right now. And I didn't really have time to recruit people, because the whole point of getting started early is you just go. So I'm like, I think this is right. I think that if somebody's going to put this forward, I'm just going to have a better shot at just doing it myself. And so I just went forward on it, and then I looked at it, and it's not, in my view, a crazy, overly complicated issue, because what it comes down to is, the Secretary of State is interpreting basically one sentence of the Constitution and using one case against me, more or less. It's not, I don't think that, it would be worth trying to recruit other people in there. I don't know what they would add, but it's kind of neat because, I mean, the ACLU case, it is the same types of issues that they're dealing with in theirs. fortunately mine involves a slightly different issue. So I don't, I can't really step on their toes, which makes it good and perfect. But yeah, it's the same type of thing they do, but I feel like it's a narrow enough issue and a clear enough issue where I can just handle it on my own, honestly.
So the wording of yours is different than theirs?
Mine just involves how early you can do it. So theirs is they have the 11 petitions that everyone's been paying attention to in the news. The 11 proposals for abortion rights, right? And so those are the ones that Andrew Bailey's blocking. What theirs mainly involves is, does Andrew Bailey have the power to block this? So they're stuck in that 51-day statutory approval process period. So
okay.
And the why they're stuck is because the end point of that 51-day statutory process is you need a ballot title before you can start collecting signatures. I was just going to
ask you about that. What does that mean, and why is that a thing? Can't you just give it a title, or what's the problem with that?
Well, because they made statutes. That's the problem. They made statutes. You say and they have to do it, is the short answer. So a ballot title has two parts, basically. It's a summary of what the proposal is, and then it's also a cost estimate. And so you submit the sample petition, like I did, is the first step, and say, here's what my proposal is going to be. Here's what I'm going to hand to people and try to get on the ballot. And then the Secretary of State will forward it to the auditor, who makes a cost estimate, basically, and then and the Secretary of State writes a summary statement. The ballot title is like a summary of what the proposal is. And both of those items, the auditor's fiscal summary and the Secretary of State's ballot summary, during that 51-day statutory process, go to the Attorney General for review. Okay. And so nobody has ever said the Attorney General gets veto power over everything. And instead, what the Attorney General is supposed to do is just do a very basic review for form. And so the ballot title, once approved within the deadline of 51 days, would go on the petition, according to the statutes, when you hand it out for signatures. So there's a statute that says you need that ballot title with the summary and the fiscal summary before you go around and get signatures on it. And so that's what theirs is can the Attorney General just say, I don't agree with this fiscal part that the auditor sent over? And that's where they're at right now. Nobody's ever made that type of argument before. The statutes have been in place for, I believe that the judgment said 25 years is this structure. So nobody's ever thought that the Attorney General has the power to just veto what the auditor wrote down as the cost estimate. Nobody's ever said, it's a bizarre argument also because you can't force two people to reach an agreement. The auditor says $1 and the Attorney General says $2, and then they just go back and forth forever. I mean, as far as this argument is concerned, and then nobody ever gets to collect signatures. So it really seems like a very bad faith argument that's just designed to delay the process indefinitely. And so that's what the ACLU is dealing with, all that statutory nightmare from the Attorney General saying, no, I don't agree with your number, auditor. So it never goes back to the Secretary of State for that final approval, and the final approval of a ballot title so that you can collect signatures. The biggest kicker in all of that is, not only is this late, way past the 50, 51, 56 days. I've seen cases cite different numbers, but whatever, it's the 50 plus days. Not only is it late, and not only could it go on indefinitely based off this unprecedented interpretation, but really, there's already a 2016 case, Boving versus Candor, where the court says this ballot title requirement under the statutes, it's not in the Constitution at all, even. So the only time the Constitution calls for a ballot title is, guess when it's being put on the ballot for people to actually vote on, not when you're collecting signatures, when you're voting for it. That's the only part of the Constitution that calls for a ballot title. And so these statutes that take over these 51 days, they're just cutting into your guaranteed signature time. And all these statutes, in my opinion, there's it's quite clear from the Supreme Court case in there that says the Constitution doesn't support this. So, in my view, all these statutes should just be cut down, and you could still get a ballot title in those 6 months while you're waiting for it to be put on the ballot. That's when it should be happening, not before signatures. So all the statutes should be unconstitutional. I think they're just mimicking
wasting our time.
Wasting our time. They're wasting our time, and they're mimicking a phrase they found in the Constitution. But the Missouri Supreme Court's already said, well, that's not what this is talking about. There's no authority for this before signatures. So, and it makes sense. Why would you want to sit there and wait for your government opponent to approve something? The way it was set up under the Missouri Constitution, there's not this waiting period. Yeah, it's wasting time, just like you said. So
can you sue them for wasting our time?
Can you sue them for wasting our time? There's a lot of protection for government officials and exercise of their official duties. So you gotta go really, really, really over the edge with what you do to be able to get sued for financial damages. Not many examples of that happening. It happens occasionally though, but you really got.
This whole thing is sort of about a timeline, right? For you, anyway.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. It absolutely is. It absolutely is, and that's why it's just frustrating on so many levels. They're already. I don't know that there's been another time where they've been late. They're already 70 days late. The whole what I'm saying is the whole 51, 56 days should be unconstitutional based on the statutes anyway. And then they're set like 70 days late past that, and there's no end in sight. So it's just level upon level upon level of Missourians' voting rights being disrespected, basically. It's not ever happened before.
So what happens after August 9th?
For my case, well, for my case, they'll eventually make a decision. It's possible. I mean, even the Attorney General said in his reply brief that maybe this is something that should end up in front of the Supreme Court for my case. So the appellate court would make a decision in, a couple of months or whatever. And then they or one of the parties could ask that it go to the Supreme Court. The Western District could say, yeah, this is an general interest issue, and so we're going to send it to the Supreme Court, or the parties could ask it for it to go to the Supreme Court. But they'll make a decision within a couple of months. And then the ACLU case, they should have theirs, I think, is set for oral argument in like a week and a half or something. But maybe theirs will be on a faster track. And so I would think that maybe or by the end of July, early August, hopefully the Missouri Supreme Court could decide there. So because all of theirs is being expedited for good reason, it's the main attraction. So hopefully late July, early August, as soon as the court can, theirs will be decided. And then it can get that within a few days, get that final approval for signatures. But the bigger question is somebody gonna pursue those? I don't even know if somebody's gonna pursue those 11 ones. You got to collect signatures next, and you got to get everyone to agree that is going to come up with the funds to hire signature collection people or have the resources somehow to do it on their own. You got to get the people with those connections, resources, to say, these are the ones we're going to actually try to collect signatures on. And whether it's one of these 11 that might get approved, hopefully within a month here, once the Supreme Court case is done, or whether they're going to have to start again with something else new. I don't know. But something has to get ready for signatures. And it's just kind of an odd process. And I know I'm not the only one who thinks this, is how out of the loop the public is until, whoever is in charge of drafting these things and saying, yeah, this is going to be the one we're going to go with. not many people are privy to those types of decisions. And that's kind of odd for most people. Now, once they decide this is a reasonable one, then everyone kind of becomes more involved and collects signatures and tries to get it on the ballot, you know. When that will happen and exactly what that proposal will be worded like, you know, I don't think most people don't know.
Okay. How can we help make that happen and know when, I think, and where and how?
That is a good question. I am interested in the answer to that myself. And so there's other proposals out there. I know there's a minimum wage one, and I had already been asking for the ones that are out there. I asked around, how do you get a signature on these? Where do I go? What do I need to do to go sign it? You'll see them pop up at different events and fairs and all of that type of thing. And so, you know, they have ways to collect these signatures. They're successful a good amount of the time. Obviously, people have been able to get these on ballots. I wish it would be easier for people to figure out how to sign it. You know, to me, that's kind of something that I thought was a good question. So what do we do next? I feel like there's a lot of people like me and maybe you and other people that are asking exactly what you're asking me. How can we help? What do we do next? One, I think, you can figure out who is collecting signatures and maybe ask if you can volunteer or join them and help collect signatures and maybe even get paid or whatnot. But I think it feels like, to me, it should be easy for people to find where to sign these petitions. And I don't know that it necessarily is.
I wonder if it's just a matter of contacting some of these organizations like Jobs for Justice and there's another organization that's doing something. It's called abortionactionmissouri.org, and it used to be NARAL, but now it's Abortion Action Missouri. And it looks like they've got something up on their website about gathering signatures, but I'm not sure for what and for when.
Right. And you know, it may be a little too early. And so maybe these websites will get more information on them. I don't really know. But I, like you, these names that you're throwing on there, I had gone to the websites, and I think I found kind of what you're finding is, yes, you can find out who is kind of in charge of it, but as far as when and where you can next do it, I don't see that type of information on there. And, you know, I could probably tell you as much about your right to collect signatures as not anybody in the state or whatever, but that's kind of my area of expertise is when is your right to collect signatures. But the process of collecting signatures, you know, that is definitely not my area of expertise. I can tell you that. But I have questions kind of like you.
Certainly there are people in this state and beyond that want to throw money at something like this, like make this happen and see it into reality. Because
I think
the country agrees with this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's definitely, I know there's companies out there that collect these signatures, and it costs, you know, multiple millions of dollars, and they go out and they know what they're doing. And I guess they do it. Seems like it should be almost in a way easy to cut out the middleman. I just don't know. Right. I don't know. There's got to be good reasons for it. It's not my area of expertise. It just seems like you should be able to like cut out the middleman and have a Google Calendar or something. To me, is like it seems like it should be easy to just find.
I know that there are people out there with the means to make this happen and that want to see it happen. You know, right? Where are they?
And I wish it would put people's mind at ease. Like, I just know that I know that eventually, you know, sometime between now and May, I'll get a chance to sign a petition in a different one, I guess. But the more signatures you can collect early on, and then the more people you can tell about it early on, and the more people whose minds put at ease about it, and just say, I got my part done, and now I can tell my friends it's easy to do. Go do this thing, just like in the way I did it. You know, do more of it earlier, faster. It's kind of been what I've been. My goal has been.
Make it easy for us.
get it done. Make it easy. Give yourself more time to deal with all the problems and all of that.
Yeah. Well, I wonder how many different people are going to be putting forth initiatives like this. Do we have any idea? Or is it just what you've heard, what I've heard? And
are you talking about on abortion or like everything or what?
Yeah, on abortion. And like, how do we know how do we know which one's gonna make it? I mean, do you think one of them is? Are there a ton of them going on, or is there just a few?
These are good questions. Questions. I think that I believe what I read. See, and I don't want to speak ahead of myself on it. Because I don't want to appoint myself the number one expert on signature collections, but I believe what I saw is the 11 ones pending. I think the ACLU said like the petitioner does not have the resources to go collect the signatures or something along those lines that made me kind of raise my eyebrows. And then I've heard, on a political podcast, I heard higher political official in Missouri being interviewed, and there was an indication that there might be some more proposals on the way. But I checked the Secretary of State's website, once a week or so, and I don't see those. And as of now, as long as I don't see them, and as long as the statutes are not ruled unconstitutional, you still have that over 50-day period, right, to get going. And just to start collecting signatures. And so I think, what are we down to? So August, September, October, November, December, and then the 4 first months, we're down to 9 months, right? And then it takes 2 months to get the approval to start getting signatures going. There's still time to start a new one, but you don't want to.
Wow, that's interesting.
You don't really want to get down to the final 3 months. I think it's such a popular proposal that probably still make it. But I mean, how many of these 9 months are we going to waste? We're if the countdown is on, 9, 8, 7. I mean, here we go, right?
So we will know by a certain date how many of these are being submitted.
Well, yeah, because May the signatures are due. Because we're hoping November 2024 ballot, right? So you have to get your signatures in 6 months before that.
So the sooner the better.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. 9 months for measure this popular. It's got to be. Maybe the biggest one in ballot initiative history, I would assume, right?
I would think.
Right. 9 months would be enough, but it's just crazy that our rights are being shrunk month by month as we go by in a way that's never been done before. Our voting rights. This is a matter of whether we can put this to a vote of the people. And we have a right to have a chance as accorded by the Missouri Constitution. But yeah, the rights just shrinking. That opportunity is shrinking day by day, month by month as we wait.
Well, you let me know what I can do to help, and I will get the biggest army together that I possibly can to help.
Whoa. Let's try a few other measures first, Bernadette. Okay, let's slow the roll here. All right. I know it.
For signatures. Not,
No, yes, no, I appreciate that, and I'm very excited to hear that you contacted people, because I'm curious. I am curious about how this works too, and I'm excited to help with the signature process.
Want to tell us a little bit about your blog, real quick?
Oh, sure. Yes, the blog. Yes, I would love to talk about my blog. Yes. So the blog. I never wanted to write a blog, but I would have to say that the blog is the superior communication format to the podcast. No offense to you and your podcast. Personally, I appreciate the invitation and your courage in inviting me here to join you. I am more comfortable, as you probably by now can tell, with the written word. And so I love trying to make what I'm trying to say clear. I got it started because I saw some shortcomings in the how legal ethics cases were handled, and so I wanted to try to bring some attention to that. And so I think that there's only 30,000 lawyers in Missouri approximately, and I think that some people have read that, and I've raised some questions and issues that I think that lawyers are giving some good faith thought to. And so that's kind of how I got started on it. And then the Dobbs draft opinion got released, and I thought, well, I already have this little soapbox going, right? And so this is the biggest, I'm a lawyer, and this is like the biggest case that could possibly be. And nobody's ever taken a right away, a constitutional right away from Americans like this. I want to see what it says. I read it, and I thought, oh, this is just smoke and mirrors, and so I've got the soapbox, and so I'll get started on that. And then, at the end of that Dobbs case, it said, well, this is going back to the people now. It's going back to the people to vote on and everything. It's like, well, I wonder how that works. And so then I started looking at the ballot initiatives like, well, I think you can start this thing right now. And so I did that part next. And so I've used the blog to, I try to cover some issues that I think that probably won't be covered by just like normal news stories or something like that. Things that might be outside of other people's interest. And legal ethics definitely is one. That's probably not interesting for most people other than lawyers for the most part, kind of. It's a little bit interesting. And then whatever political issues kind of interest me is kind of how it's developed into. And so I've got the blog going. I never wanted to start it. I have thought about quitting the blog, but then
no.
I know. That's what I know. But then I realized it's just kind of whatever I want to put into it. Kind of the first forgiveness, I gave myself is, well, if I go a month without posting, it's okay. I've used to kind of think, well, I should at least post something real short, but it's like, I'll post whenever I want. And then like my Roe versus Wade anniversary one, the last one, that was my first really big one I did in quite a while. I talked about Josh Hawley being the number one election denier, and that was a big one, a big long one I had did in January. I think I got most of my big super long ones out of the way. I did one on the Moore versus Harper case, which was a pretty big long one. But I
haven't
think
read that one
that yet. Yeah. And that went our way, they just did that decision a week ago. And gotta say, kind of went how I thought it would, but a lot of people thought that too. A lot of people thought this is too far, even for this kind of extreme Supreme Court, So a lot of people made that prediction, but I wrote about that, and that case did go the way of the good guys, and that was good. But I try to keep it interesting, but it's legal, political related. And I try to write in a way that cracks myself up so I keep myself entertained also.
It is entertaining. And shout out to JoJo for putting it out to me, because I had not seen it before, and she was like, you got to read this.
Thank you for saying so. Yeah, she is great. Yes, she's been. Yes, yeah, she is always on point and sharp, and she has been very helpful in general, supportive of me, and much appreciated.
Where else can people find you? Where else would you like for people to come and look at you and check you out on social media?
I'm on Twitter, so yeah, Wolf Raises Human, although I'm kind of off of Twitter now because it's bad. So I'm
so bad.
I don't, that's everyone's dilemma right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm on Threads.
Okay.
I'm on there, and so, but I'm on both, I guess. I kind of am lurking more on Twitter, I guess, and seeing if Threads will take over and be a more reasonable option. But I'm on both those things, I guess.
All right. So Threads, kind of Twitter, and your blog for sure. And
right. The blog is the go-to source. Yes. Right now, people are waiting to see if our voting rights are going to stop getting blocked. And I feel like that's kind of mainly why I'm here. I've got my case going. The ACLU has their important cases going. Everyone's waiting to see when one of these proposals is going to get ready for signature. People need to know about why that Dobbs decision was entered under false pretenses, and we weren't locking up our moms and wives and sisters in jail over this. And it was always a liberty throughout our country's history. So that's what I'm here on mainly now. But check out the blog. There's all kinds of issues, and there's always stuff happening out there. So I'll be around making snarky comments on Threads and posting things. And seeing people like you around, I'm sure.
All right. Good deal.
All of that.
That's fun.
But yeah, for now, I think, ballot initiative and abortion rights and that type of thing. That's what we're looking at.
Good deal. Well, thank you so much for doing what you're doing. And, if there's anything else that we can do to help, I mean, I'm sure that the people that are watching this are going to want to know what they can do to help. Just let me know. We'll put all the links that we can in the description for this video and this podcast. And we just really, really appreciate your time. I know it's very valuable, and I know you've got a lot going on. So thank you. Thank you so much.
That is so kind of you. Thank you for having me, Bernadette. I can't believe that I got convinced to do a podcast, and
right here.
And yes,
right
but
here.
It's for good reason. You're good people, it seems, and you came highly recommended and for good reason. And I'm glad you're one of the good folks. So it's been
the
a
very
pleasure
same.
chatting. Yeah, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. So you made this. I'll tell you what, it could have looked even worse than I did. So I appreciate your help.
Oh, you look wonderful.
Goodbye, America.
Okay.
You got